Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Online at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, members of the podcast and comedy troupe Freshly Squeezed Pulp discuss how they are introducing pulp's legacy of adventure to a younger generation. Appearing on the panel are Madeleine Gogné, Victoria Wang, and Teddi Norrell. The panel was part of ERBfest 2021, held in conjunction with PulpFest 2021. This event was recorded on Saturday, August 21, 2021, at PulpFest 2021 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mac begins.
We're just very excited to be here. I guess we're going to just jump in with some quick hellos as well, too. Take some time to introduce ourselves, take some time to introduce our group. So right here, we are a group called Freshly Squeezed Pulp. Of course, pun intended there. You'll probably hear us refer to ourselves as FSP for short as well, too. That's kind of the word on the street and on campus is what we call it. So today we're going to be talking to you in this panel titled Introducing Pulp's Legacy of Adventure to a Younger Generation. Just to introduce myself, my name is Matt Gogné. That's short for McDonald. That's just my middle name there, and it's kind of a Scottish thing, I suppose. But I am one of the co-founders and a former president and co-president of FSP. I also was the voice of Jane Porter in the Adventures of Tarzan podcast here. I'm the producer of the Adventures of Tarzan as well as the editor. And I'm going to throw this over here to Teddi.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Teddi Norrell. My pronouns are she, they. And I am an actor in FSP. I played the roles of Albert Verper, as well as David Inez, and a few other miscellaneous characters throughout the production of our Tarzan show.
Hi, I'm Victoria Wang, and I'm really excited to see everyone here. I think it's really cool that even at this convention, it feels like a bridging of generations of sorts, and I think that's really awesome. So, like Mac said, we're all students at Duke. Mac and Teddi have since graduated. I am a junior this year, and I'm also the newest president. And I'm just so excited to be able to sort of grab Mac's torch, and just lead FSP onwards and better up, I suppose.
She's doing amazing things already.
Set a real high bar, though, so it's going to be big shoes to fill. But I'm excited for everything that's coming up, and I suppose for the sake of Freshly Squeezed Pulp, that is my profile.
Heck yeah. And just even over here too, we just have some information about how you can check us out online. So you can find our Adventures of Tarzan on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and we also have a little website right there with some more information about our different programs. But I guess let's dive into it a little bit more about what is Freshly Squeezed Pulp. So we are a comedy podcasting troupe that produce podcasts in the style of old-time radio serials, and we are originally from Duke University. Many of our members originally started the group back in 2018, and we started it originally with the Adventures of Tarzan podcast that we were doing. Many of our members have graduated, but we have many young members as well too. Probably if we were to tally everybody up, we probably would have had a total of 25 to 35 different voice actors across the years and members who were involved at some point. So, we're really excited that we've been able to work with such a large group of diverse and wonderful people who have brought just such depth to the stories that we're being able to tell. Just kind of jumping into, I know Victoria's going to touch on this a little bit more later as well too, but we'd love to hear a little bit of a brief discussion of what the future for FSP might hold as well too, going forward with you coming in as the new president.
Yeah, for sure. So I myself am very, very interested in storytelling and narrative because I think that one of the most important aspects of social cohesion is empathy, right? When you're older, you want younger people to understand you. When you're younger, you don't really think about who understands you or who you understand. All you care about is really the people around you. And I suppose if you understand people around you better, then that makes your life easier, right? You make friends easier and you get to know people better. But I think we're entering a social age, right, where all the differences that when we were younger, either chose to ignore or didn't realize we were ignoring, all those differences are really coming to a head. And so what I hope to do with Freshly Squeezed Pulp is to really introduce that element of, cross-cultural, cross-identity, cross-generational communication and understanding. And I just think that storytelling, especially in a genre that has been so impactful, not only amongst, obviously older generations, not only amongst our own pop culture that is so heavily influenced by all the tropes and the stories and the writers that really came out of the pulp genre, I think that this is just such a fruitful ground to be able to build a lot of that empathy in order to bring our society into one that is much more unified and much more, I suppose, kind is, I think, the word I'm looking for.
Definitely. And I feel like sort of the FSP vibe of things is we kind of bring people in with fun comedy and fun adventure, but, kind of through that escapism. Because we all look for escapism. That's one of the best parts of pulp is just kind of disappearing into a world, that you're immersed in. But we always are kind of like, once you're coming out of the story, once our story comes to a close, we still want you to walk away with something, with some new understanding or some new perspective as well.
And what I also love about pulp that I really want to not only make it more accessible for everyone, right, but also sort of use it as a way for this sort of I suppose this field for empathy development is because I think pulp has always been a genre where people who might feel like they're misfits find comfort in, right? People who might be, I suppose, ridiculed for their super niche passions and everything. Pulp is an area where you're able to find a community. You're able to find stories that feature misfits like you. And I just even think that genre, where it's one that's sprung out from, this desire to be included, I think, is also part of why I think for the future of pulp, to really bring it so that you can use pulp as an arena for just more diverse storytelling. Just on top of everything you said, I think is also, to me, personally, I think is a really important direction that pulp should take.
Definitely. And it's looking like going forward that you're going to do incredible things, and we of course cannot wait to see. I know, bear with me, you're going to hear some more from these incredible people here today as well too, but I'm going to go on a bit of a producer rant about our Adventures of Tarzan program. I feel like this has been our baby, and I'm just so excited to get to talk about it and show it to other people here. But just to give you a little bit of background, so the Adventures of Tarzan program, which our season 1 cover is right up there. We're about 2 weeks away from our second season coming into action here as well too. So I'll give you, before I jump into that and before I jump into kind of how we're releasing things here, I'll give you just a little bit of background. So FSP started with the Adventures of Tarzan. That was its debut program, and it originally, the group and the project was formed because a group of us writers who wrote on the program, that's me and that's my colleagues Brock Foreman and Daniel Agito. We had met up at dinner, and there had recently been a big storm, so Daniel had stayed in and watched the Disney Tarzan, and he's like, I know Disney always gets everything wrong, so what's the difference between the Disney Tarzan and the actual Tarzan? And Brock pulls up their phone, and they're like, holy cow, there were 24 of these novels, and we just start reading through the Wikipedia descriptions, and they're like, there's dinosaurs, there's the center of the earth, we're like, how have we not heard about this stuff? Other people our age would adore these stories. And so we started thinking, we were big fans of podcasts, and Brock and I in particular were big fans of the Thrilling Adventure Hour in particular, which was a really well-known old-time radio kind of serialized style, and we were like, what if we were to do something similar? So we basically hauled ourselves up in a room one Friday afternoon to try writing a script for Tarzan of the Apes, for the first Tarzan novel there. And we came out 8 hours later this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I think I'm going crazy with how much I love this. And we went to another friend and we were like, we just need to check and see if we are actually going crazy or if this is actually something funny and something that other people would like to listen to. And so we took it to the coffee house at Duke, which is kind of the cool place to hang out, it's where everybody does their homework, and it's got kind of pulpy paintings on the walls and everything. And we started reading it to our friend who was the barista there. And as we're reading it, people are putting down their homework and they're gathering around just to listen to the story that we were telling, and they were laughing. And it was this moment of holy cow, people in our generation don't know about this, and we want to have an impact on bringing it back. And so essentially, we started production late 2018. We were probably done with the first 3 Tarzan novels and recording them and having, written comedy scripts about them by the end of 2018. Started off with episode 4 and finished all the way up to Tarzan and the Lion Man. During that time, we took the summer off, worked on a couple of projects, finished writing some scripts. But then there was a collection of us that were like, we hear the ERB team is going to be at this con called PulpFest, that's being held in Mars, Pennsylvania. And so we packed up our bags and we bought our $20 Greyhound bus tickets up, right? And, we were like, we're going to come up for a day and we're going to meet everybody and we're going to see things. And I remember we came to the Edgar Rice Burroughs convention panel, and I think I asked an obscure question to Christopher Paul Carey over here about canon, and I just remember him looking at me like, what the heck? Like, what's this group doing here? And I went up and I was asking for his autograph, and he and Matt were there as well too, and they're like, we would love to talk to you guys, and Wynn was there as well too, and we ended up going out to dinner with them and talking, and eventually kind of the secret came out, like, hey, we've been working on this really cool project, we want to tell you about it. We've got like 35 students on Duke's campus talking about Law of Opar's redemption arc, and we think there's something there. And essentially Christopher kind of leaned over the table and was like, well, we can talk about trademark if you're interested. And that started the long process of getting that wonderful little R up there. But it's been wonderful and amazing, and we're officially licensed as of 2021 by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. While we had originally been producing those episodes and posting them online, we took them down so that we could provide the official authorized one with our proper audio statements and proper licensing. So we're amidst the middle of our re-release for the program, so we are releasing every Wednesday around noon, and so every Wednesday around noon you can tune in and you can hear a new one of the Tarzan novels get discussed about and have its adaptation. We are technically not a fully canonical adaptation of each of the 24 Tarzan novels. Obviously we're trying to be kind of a well-intentioned parody, if you will, but at the same time we're telling a story that's much closer to the books than we've seen done with prior television shows, for example. So we're diving into a lot of the mythos and a lot of the interaction there as well too. So we have a lot of respect for the original novels. We just wanted to find ways to incorporate sort of like tropes and storytelling ideas that people our generation find really, really appealing. And I think one of the aspects too there is, while it's not a canonical adaptation, we kind of realized halfway through writing that we wanted it to be more than just directly telling the Tarzan story word for word in the canon, that we wanted it to be almost a metafictional commentary on how Tarzan exists in society. So, getting into what is how is Tarzan interpreted through the years? What are different versions of Tarzan? How does Tarzan, possibly see himself? And, I know one of the metafictional aspects that had a large influence was the original Barton Verper books that were authorized, and there was controversy they were not authorized, excuse me, and that was the point, and that there was a lot of controversy that existed there, and we'd been reading about that when we were writing the program, and we ended up making Verper our lead villain because of that, and this notion of a Tarzan villain kind of trying to co-opt the Tarzan narrative was something we were like, that's a very villainous thing to do, and so Teddi here is our Verper, and I think, Teddi, you want to take it away talking about?
So one thing I really enjoyed about playing Verper and just the whole characterization of him as the main villain, I'm just going to come out and say I have never read any of the Tarzan books, so I'm not sure if my interpretation of his original characterization is correct, because all I read was that he stole some jewels and then got killed by a panther, and that was it. And, but the way I was playing him as the main villain is that he was just this very he's a mastermind. He is just very manipulative, and I started examining him in the context of a Tarzan villain. I realized he's the exact opposite of Tarzan. Tarzan is just at least the way how we characterized him is just this very he's good-hearted, but he doesn't always think through things. He just very much acts on his heart. And Verper is just he's just pure evil, and he very much like thinks through everything he does, like to the littlest like minute detail, and it's very much this whole sort of relationship between them of like, Verper's just like, I can control this guy, I can make him do what I want. And with all the obstacles that are introduced, I mean, it becomes harder, but he still like keeps on going with it. And when I realized that, I'm like, dang, I love this character. But yeah, it's Verper. I love Verper.
Well, it was fantastic too, because we would write these characters and we kind of put a new spin on them, and we'll go through some of the cool new spins we took on some of the characters, but it was really the voice actors who ran with the characters and made them what they were and who they became, and that was just one of the fantastic parts is bringing Pulp to a new generation. Pulp is innately supposed to be escapist, and you have to have a character that you relate to escape into. So having so many different people from so many different backgrounds and world experiences coming in and making a character to sort of escape into this narrative for it meant that there was always going to be an option for someone to experience and to relate with something within the podcast itself. So for example, some of our kind of our newer characters and sort of how the new takes that we took on them within our heartfelt parody was, different from the canon. Law is not romantically interested in Tarzan, but she has a scholastic rivalry with Jane, and talking about that and everything there. And she's redemptive, which of course is true to the canon as well too. But she's also very overly formal. She's not a very emotional character, very stoic. Where we have the klutzy yet scholastically adorable Jane.
Yeah, and I just want to add, when Max said that their rivalry is more scholastic, I just want to clarify that a little bit. So we see that in the original canon, right? The core conflict between Jane and Law is centered around Tarzan. It's centered around this love for Tarzan, whether it's lustful or romantic or real, however you want to frame it, it's love for Tarzan that is their conflict. When Max says that now Law's conflict with Jane is scholastic, what she means is, apart from her feelings from Tarzan, here you have an outsider, right? Jane is the outsider who shows up to your home after reading maybe one manual, right? She thinks she knows the blueprint of this house. And she is now saying, no, right? You shouldn't put the salt shaker here because it makes it harder for you to cook. But she was never the one cooking.
Exactly.
And so very similarly, Jane goes into Law's hometown, goes into Law's country, nation, however you want to put it. Mm-hmm. And because of her intellectual knowledge that she gained, first of all, secondhand, she thinks that she knows how to run her country better than Law. Now that being the center conflict, I think to a large extent, is what Mac means by like that scholastic conflict, right? Like it's not about knowledge, it's about this breaching, this violation of like your agency, of your territory, and I think that at its core is very, very relatable to like every audience, right? In fact, I think it might be even more relatable to a modern audience who quite frankly does not care about like fluffy love the same way that perhaps we would conceptualize. I suppose women is what we're talking about in the past would. Now, whether or not women in the past really did care about fluffy love that much is still up for debate. But at the very least, now we know that, it's not so much something that consumes girls nowadays. And so when Max says, like, oh, we take the same characters, but we recontextualize them in a way that maintains their center personalities, like every fundamental thing about Law is maintained, right? It's just how she's interpreted has been shifted in a way that doesn't contradict the original interpretation either. So I think what Mac is especially concerned about when she created Tarzan was this addition of another interpretation to make it more relatable to even more people.
To bring it to a younger generation,
right.
and cater it to how a younger generation views and reads narratives. Exactly, I couldn't have put it better. And taking new takes, like we have our wonderful villains that are, kind of classic, like we dive into Nicholas Rokoff and Alexis Polovich. We have kind of a manic pixie dream girl gone, completely and utterly mad with Nemini. And one of my favorites in particular that I worked really heavily with was, turning Hazel Strong, Jane's best friend, into kind of a character in her own right, which originally that had kind of started, we were like, you can't have a name Hazel Strong and not be completely badass, we got to do something with that. And so, instead of Hazel just kind of, existing as a best friend to Jane, she's someone who's like, I'll participate in this narrative if I feel like it. I'm going to go off and have another adventure somewhere else. And a little bit of we haven't officially announced this, so one of the fun announcements we saved for PulpFest here is, there we go, hot off the press. After the series is complete, we will have a 1-hour Hazel Strong special as well too, that dives into Hazel's background and where she's coming from, and why she is potentially a secret agent working with someone very mysteriously by the name of Sparrowhawk, who knows the way to the center of the earth. So there's code names, there's noir, we get a little bit of a touch of some drama in there as well too. So needless to say, that is going to be really fantastic. And I think just even to kind of sum up what we've been talking about before we jump into some further discussions, we've had the opportunity to get students on Duke's campus talking about, characters from the original Tarzan novels. We've gotten them into, books, and you can talk to someone about like Tarzan and the Lion Man, or I remember, Teddi, you coming up to me and being like, why did we skip Tarzan and the Ant-Man? Like, she just came to me like, holding the book in the library, like, we can't fit this in. I'm like, we need an even number of episodes to split between 2 seasons.
I mean, it was just such a weird and interesting story. I don't know why you didn't include it.
Valid. And, hey, maybe we'll need to add it in there sometime. But, it kind of got us thinking, like, we got people talking about these books. We got a part of our younger generation, a part of our community involved. How can we spread the word about pulp to a younger generation? And while we're going to talk a little bit up here too, we're eventually going to open up for a couple of questions, but we're also going to have a couple of questions for you. And later this evening and going forward, we want to make sure that, us as a younger generation is having conversations and hearing the perspectives and getting to hear your points of view about what you would like to see passed on to a younger generation, so that we can make sure that pulp's legacy survives through the decades. But I think before we get to that, we just wanted to, I wanted to go down the line even and just hear what Victoria and Teddi also have to say about, how do we bring the word about pulp to a younger generation? How's the right way to do that?
For sure. So I think that, pulp has always been made for the people, right? It was never supposed to be highbrow. Highbrow has always been very exclusive, very elitist, very closed doors, if you will. Pulp was meant to be very open doors. Now, unfortunately, in a society that was so weighted down by beliefs that excluded women, excluded people of color, excluded just like all of these different groups, pulp ended up being mainly for the white male population. Now, that's not an inherently bad thing for the time. The reason why we think that bringing pulp to a wider audience could be helpful is because we want more people to connect to pulp so that pulp can have a larger reach and therefore expand its legacy. Mm-hmm. Now, I think how to do that would be in order to give people that sort of escapism that attracted the initial audience base, right? So I noticed that in pulp fiction, and it's not exclusive to pulp fiction, you see it a lot in movies and other media and other forms of entertainment. You see these like traditional marginalized communities, right? They're always characters that have actions being done to them, right? They're objectified in that sense. So for example, in John Carter, you have Deja Thoris, right? She's saved by John Carter, even though she managed to survive for some time on her own. So it's not that she's completely useless. So, like, she must have helped John in some way, big or small, right? And yet she's pitted in a way where something is done to her. I think the way that we really want to bring it to a new and wider audience is by having characters not just switched off, right? We don't want a face switch. Nobody cares about a face swap. We want the narrative, the story itself to change so that these characters, right? For example, we want women, people of color, not to have things done to them, but have things done with them, right? To have John and Deja basically be saved while working together. To basically have this narrative about actions that they do together, right? It's mm-hmm. turning them from an object into an actor. Mm-hmm. And so, I think just even in the canon, one plot point that is so rich in potential for that is when she is trapped in that prison, basically attached to like the Temple of the Sun with like the 2 other women, right? Because here you have an environment where it's just those 3 women. Now, I'm not sure how, I suppose, up to date in pop culture you guys might be with Netflix shows, but a few years back there was a really, really popular show called Orange is the New Black. It's about this 20-some woman who basically gets arrested for a crime that she unknowingly did like a decade ago. And she is this like prim and proper, suburban, white, sheltered young woman. And she is thrown into like a high intensity prison. And this is based on a true story. And that show was a hit, right? To see that transition of like this sheltered girl turn into this, I suppose, seasoned girl who can actually go ahead and, survive in such a cruel and such a tough environment, right? We see that storyline is also in the character of Deja Thoris. And so I think what we need to realize is all the connections between these like pulp tropes and pulp storylines and existing plot points that people nowadays go crazy for. Mm-hmm. And once you notice those connections, it's really easy to bring those parts back so that your consumers, right, like your watchers, are now able to enjoy that sort of narrative in the genre of pulp.
Definitely. And we're firm believers of the fact that deepening those different characters' experiences, just making their backstories and, their complexities and their characters even richer, that makes the universe, that you're operating within, that kind of fictional universe just all the more deeper, all the more real. It brings an element of realism so that escapism is just even more potent, right? That you can feel like you're actually existing in this universe with diverse and depth-filled characters.
Exactly. Like, the big sort of issue we had with, taking these things that, like, people of a much older generation love and, like, trying to, I guess, modernize it is that there's a lot of this fear of, like, oh, we're making it, like, too politically correct, or, like, we're sort of, like, taking this one thing and turning it into a completely different thing. We have a lot of respect for the original works. It's just that, like, sometimes when you're reading it, there's, like, just these little things that just wouldn't really fly nowadays. But, like, also it's not just a matter of, like, erasing these things that are, like, part of the canon. It's also just, like, taking them, and like you said, making them more interesting. Developing these characters beyond, oh, who is this person? Oh, she's, like, a love interest of Tarzan who, like, makes this whole, like, love triangle. Like, no, we're, like, taking this character and expanding upon her and, like, making her, like interesting beyond, like, how she relates to the main character. Like, that she's able to, like, stand alone as a character that can be, like, examined and, like, understood and related to.
Certainly. And that way we can still have so many of the fundamental plot points, that we can exist and have this action and this, storyline that we know and we love and that people have loved for generation after generation, but with new, aspects to it and new, sort of added details.
And also I feel like with, like, modernizing it, it's just one, again, I'm not as deep into this as y'all are, but one thing that sort of, like, caught me about this is that the book seemed a lot more, like, episodic. Like, it's just, like, the stories feel, like, more contained. Mm-hmm. And as far as, like, turning this into, like, making this more modern, that involved making it more serialized, we're doing, like, a podcast. There's, like, one episode after the other. Like, so we had, like, a cohesive narrative. So, like,
finding ways to link the stories together.
Yeah, and, like, try to tie in this, like, overarching narrative, which, I mean, with, like, the introduction of Verper as, like, the main villain, it's, like, whenever I think of Tarzan, like, I can't really, like, original Tarzan, I can't really think of a main villain typically. I mean, maybe Clayton, but that's just from my experience with, like, watching the Clayton was in the Disney movie, right? Yeah, like, that's the only one I know. And so, like, taking this character and putting him, like, front and center that, like, most people don't know who it is. Like, whenever I look up, like Verper as a character, I just get the Barton Verper books. It's just, like I said, he's this character who, like, only really exists in, like, one book and dies off screen, and that's really it. And then you took him and made him into this force to be reckoned with. And I've had multiple moments where I'm acting out this character and I would, like, leave the booth just shaking. It's like, oh God, I said all that? But yeah, they're just, you've done a lot of great work. You, Daniel Brock, everybody working on Tarzan, just phenomenal stuff.
Well, we're so excited to bring it to you, and we're so excited to hear from you and to get feedback as well. I mean, this is trial and error process, right? You know, we're learning how to do this just as the whole pulp community is learning how to keep pulp surviving going forward, and we want this to be a discussion. We don't want to be telling people, you know, this is absolutely how we have to do it. You know, we're learning too. We're trying to figure out the best way moving forward. So I think, you know, with that in mind, I'm going to have Victoria talk a little bit about, I know we're running short on time here. We're going to have Victoria just talk for like, you know, a super quick bit about some more of the future of FSP, and then we're going to open for just a couple of quick questions, and we'd love to, of course, hear from you guys a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, so generally, I think all the major things I wanted to say, I've said. So, I mean, I'm really curious to actually hear from you guys now.
Okay.
And so if you guys have any questions or any thoughts, we're totally open to reception.
Awesome. Let's see. Can we take Matt back here?
I mean, when you were doing the research for this, when you were deciding on what you were going to do, did everybody sort of find a favorite character or a favorite, you know, book or you know, like character?
Certainly. I know we've talked about her a lot up here, but I feel like the campus favorite was Law, to say the least. I think everybody loved Law of Opar and the Opar plotline. Personally, my bias is Jane. I've always loved Jane. I've loved Jane in the original canon as well too. So I'm a Midwesterner as well too. So you'll see if you listen to us that we poke fun at the fact that Jane is technically from Wisconsin, and so she has a very annoying Wisconsin accent, and that makes for a lot of comedy, and it's pretty fun. But how about you, Teddy?
I mean, I'm obviously biased too. I can't stop talking about Harper. It's just like, he was just a very fun character to play. I love a good villain, and also, I mean, one thing that like sort of stuck with the character, even though it was a mistake, is like I remember reading that Verper was Belgian, and for some reason in my head, I thought that was like more like German, when really it's more like French. So I just go in like doing this like sort of, you know, just like this evil like German guy, like, and it just sort of stuck. And like I'm not sure if this was like intentionally written in or like already exists in the story, but like Verper like pretended to be like a German general at one point. And it's like, okay, yeah, it's like we're taking this and we're rolling with it. But I mean, yeah, he was just a very fun character, and just listening back and like through the episodes where like he was introduced and like hearing me like get the voice down pat and get his sort of like presence down it's just been really fun.
Definitely. Victoria, any takes or any characters you'd love to dive into in the future with FSP too?
I mean, so I think personally, my personal favorite in terms of Tarzan is, like you said, Law. I think I see a lot of myself in her. I don't know. Take that as you will. I don't know how that's going to be received, but I think in the future, this is my personal opinion only, not to be affiliated with ERB, but I would really love to see FSP really just continue like the series of taking pulp fiction and, you know, like you said earlier, just freshly squeezing it, you know. And I'm really interested in the character of Deja Thoris because I just think that there's so much left to be said. You know, I think fundamentally, if you really think about her storyline, she has to be a very strong figure. There's no way she's making it through all of that if she's not a strong figure. And I think it's a disservice to her to be framed as someone who's just saved, when in reality, you know, if John Carter went along and helped invade like one of her enemy city-states, like she must have informed him about some things, right? He's like this newbie, so she must have informed him on some of the politics. So I think that can make for like a really cool, almost like Game of Thrones-esque vibe, and I think people would go crazy for it.
I love it.
Incomparable.
Oh, there is. Sir, let's take one more question.
I'm a little curious about your academic backgrounds and professional aspirations.
Sure thing. So for me, as crazy as it sounds, I'm a bit of a math geek. So I'm actually a math PhD student myself, but I know a lot of pulp fiction writers kind of got their start during grad school doing writing there. So my hope is to be an author as well as to be an academic. But how about you here, Victoria?
Yeah, I'm a psychology major, and I'm taking 2 minors. I'm taking a minor in economics and a minor in cinematic arts because personally I'm really into like screenwriting. It's one of those things where I really hope to make a part of my career in the future, but you know, I hope to do it in more of like a roundabout way. I hope to also sort of work at the intersection of like screenwriting, education, as well as psychology research. So yeah, that's what I hope to do.
Heck yeah.
I graduated with a major in cultural anthropology, and I feel like and that definitely applying it to these sort of like Pulp Fiction narratives, it definitely sort of like opened my eyes to like, oh, here's some things that are like not okay with like what's being presented. Here's how we can like fix that. And it's just, and I feel like that definitely helps in making the narrative like much more inclusive and like representing these different cultures and different like peoples, and like with much more justice to their identities.
Certainly. Well, and these are all great questions. We certainly implore you to come talk with us as well too.
Yep.
One question we have for you, whether or not we'll be able to, maybe this can just stay on everybody's minds, come up and tell us, or we can probably take a couple of quick answers here too. We would love to know, what aspects of pulp do you love the most, and what works in pulp would you love to see passed on to a younger generation? Let's maybe take a couple quick ones, and then we certainly would love you guys to come talk to us sometime when you have some time.
Like, what aspects do you guys really, really want to see?
What
passed
stories
down?
and characters too.
Yep.
Heinlein is great. There we go. Which Heinlein book are you thinking?
I don't think you can go wrong with Half-Space Social Travel or any of the juveniles.
Totally. I love it. What else?
You do have to do H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, how fascinating. Okay, now that you
He
mention...
really needs a lot of fixing.
Right. I mean, now that you mention H.P. Lovecraft, actually, in the television scene, HBO Max actually last year came out with a show called Lovecraft Country.
We've
It
been
is
big
literally it is basically what FSP is doing, but on a much larger scale.
With
They're
a
doing it
much
better.
bigger
Yeah,
budget.
they combine Lovecraft horror with racial terror, and so.
The book is excellent.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a very good book.
Absolutely.
Heck
And
yeah.
so, even with that show, it's like you see, like, there's an audience for this. Like, there is potential in our society for pulp to very much be passed down.
Yeah, it's like, I personally, I love the sort of impact H.P. Lovecraft has had. I don't want to say I love his works. I love the stuff that has sort of sprawled out of like the things he's made. The things he's made very much reflect who he was as a person. So modernizing it like definitely would be.
He said he needs a lot of fixing.
Yeah.
He has some good stuff with there's a lot of
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Any other suggestions?
yeah. Anybody else?
Or even other questions, we're happy to listen.
I had a question. As Victoria is talking about the three characters trapped in prison, I was thinking of Jean Reese and the Wide Sargasso Sea. Are you familiar with this book?
Unfortunately, I'm not.
Reese, R.H.Y.S. She took Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, and took the Mad Woman in the Attic, and she wrote an entire novel.
Oh, fantastic.
Cool.
Rochester's Mansion.
So
So
cool.
That kind of thing. And my question was, if you conceive of these kind of fill-in novels, filling in these gaps, do they still have the same kind of breakneck pacing, the kind of style of pulps? How do you see that working?
I don't think that, breakneck pacing is something that could be halted by even just like a small story, right? I think if someone can capture, and I'm very personally a fan of, I feel like being an ERB nut, I am someone who has read, many of the original books and do very much love them. Taking a look at a lot of the new works that are being done by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, loving them and seeing ERB's style being replicated, seeing that, fiction and that pacing, and seeing kind of still that element of campiness in there as well too. There's still that good humor, and I think it's nice because we're seeing it preserved, and we're seeing people who are coming in and who are studying it and finding ways to bring that. But then at the same time opening that and, sort of finding ways that new people can kind of come into the, canon and can come into the group as well too.
Yeah, I want to just add, I think my entire attitude on this is, I don't see why not. And I think that's the whole point of FSP. We're taking pulp and we're taking everything that it has and we're asking, I don't see why not, right? If you want a character who's powerful, I don't see why not. If you want a character who's expanded, I don't see why not. If you have a character who's never ever been written about, or like a character who has an identity who's never ever been shown in mainstream media before, I don't see why not. Like I don't see why they can't be shown just like every other character. So
yeah, I mean,
so when it comes to breakneck pacing of the plot, I don't see why not.
It makes me sad that that other women my age don't know that Jane Porter is is a character, or that Deja Thoris is a character, and you wanting to bring light to these new narratives and shed light on these characters. We're hoping that it would bring about just so many new works and can continue on. Pulp Fiction just being such a foundational, literary group to influence popular culture for hopefully millennia to come. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But yes, please come up and talk to us whenever you get the chance. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, we'll be here all night. So
there we go.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Please visit us online at thepulp.net. Also, look for the PulpNet on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. The Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2021.